Your backyard soil is probably dying right now and you don't even know it. But there's a 600-year-old secret that can reverse the damage without spending a dime on fertilizers. Why are these 9 ancient plants still banned from most gardening advice? Medieval knights didn't just rely on armor and swords. When battle wounds needed healing, they turned to a humble plant that grew wild in every field: yarrow. These warriors knew something we're just rediscovering. This feathery-leafed wonder doesn't just mend flesh, it can resurrect dead soil faster than you can say Excalibur. Here's where it gets interesting. Yarrow works like a microscopic matchmaker underground, encouraging helpful bacteria to throw the soil equivalent of a block party. These tiny organisms break down organic matter and create nutrients that plants absolutely devour. It's chemistry without the lab coat. But wait, there's more to this medieval marvel. Remember how your grandfather always said the best solutions are usually the simplest ones? Well, yarrow proves him right. Its dense root system weaves through soil like nature's own reinforcement mesh, preventing erosion that would otherwise wash away precious topsoil. Think of it as installing underground guardrails for your garden. Now, before you go planting yarrow everywhere like confetti at a wedding, here's the catch. This plant has zero respect for property lines. Give it an inch, and it'll take your entire garden bed. Regular trimming keeps it behaved, but ignore it for a month, and you'll find it plotting world domination with the enthusiasm of a door-to-door salesman. The real magic happens when you measure what yarrow does to soil chemistry. Studies show it can boost phosphorus content by up to 100%. That's like upgrading your soil from basic cable to premium streaming. Suddenly, everything works better. Then there's the pollinator party. Bees treat yarrow flowers like an all-you-can-eat buffet, and happy bees mean happy gardens. More pollinators equals better fruit and vegetable production across your entire plot. Medieval herbalists called yarrow nature's band-aid for good reason. Those same healing compounds that patched up wounded knights also help struggling soil recover from years of neglect or chemical abuse. But yarrow is just the opening act in this medieval soil revival story. Wait until you discover what dandelions can do underground. That common weed might just be the heavy-lifting hero your compacted soil has been desperately waiting for. You know what medieval folks called dandelions? Dent de lion, lion's teeth. These weren't the yard villains your neighbors complain about today. Back then, people actually paid for dandelions at the market. Wild, right? Here's the thing your grandfather's grandfather knew that somehow got lost. Dandelions are basically nature's jackhammers with a college degree. While you're cursing that bright yellow invasion on your lawn, those weeds are performing underground surgery on your soil. That taproot? It's not messing around. We're talking about a root system that drills down 10 feet or more, deeper than some trees. It's like having a tiny construction crew working 24/7, breaking up that concrete hard soil that makes your other plants wheeze for air. But here's where it gets interesting. As that root pushes down, it's creating highways for water and oxygen. Your poor suffocated soil suddenly gets to breathe again. Makes sense, right? Medieval herbalists weren't just brewing dandelion wine for kicks, though I bet that helped with the back pain from all that gardening. They knew something we forgot. These plants were fixing dead soil faster than you could say, ground that's harder than my mother-in-law's biscuits. The real magic happens when those roots decompose. All that organic matter gets distributed throughout the soil profile, creating pockets of fertility exactly where your struggling plants need it most. It's like getting a soil amendment that installs itself. Well, there's one catch. Those leaves can taste bitter enough to make a lemon pucker. So if you're planning an edible garden nearby, maybe keep some distance unless you enjoy salads that fight back. And the weird part is, one dandelion plant can produce up to 2,000 seeds. That's either a gardener's dream or nightmare, depending on your perspective. Medieval monks actually cultivated these in their monastery gardens specifically for soil repair. They'd plant them in worn-out areas and watch the magic happen. Speaking of medieval garden magic, there's another plant those old-timers use that makes dandelions look like beginners. This one they called knitbone for good reason, and it works even faster at transforming dead dirt into garden gold. Medieval healers called Comfrey knitbone for good reason. This stuff could supposedly mend broken bones faster than a knight could say, ouch. Well, turns out those old-timers were onto something big. just not quite what they thought. Here's where it gets interesting. Comfrey doesn't just heal people, it performs surgery on your soil. Dead dirt doesn't stand a chance against this green powerhouse. The magic happens in those massive leaves. When they drop and decompose, they're like slow-release vitamin pills for your garden. Nitrogen? Check. Potassium? Double check. Phosphorus? You bet. It's basically a buffet table that keeps refilling itself. But wait, there's more to this story. Those roots go deep, really deep. We're talking 3 to 4 feet down into the earth. Think of Comfrey as nature's own mining operation, hauling up nutrients from the basement and delivering them to the penthouse where your vegetables live. Pretty clever for a plant that just sits there looking innocent, right? Now here comes the fun part. Studies show that Comfrey mulch can boost plant growth rates by up to 60%. That's like giving your tomatoes a shot of espresso every morning. Your neighbors will wonder what kind of black magic you're practicing when your garden explodes with life. The leaves grow back faster than my father-in-law's opinions at dinner. Chop them down, and within weeks, you've got fresh material for composting. It's like having a renewable resource right in your backyard. No trips to the garden center required. One word of caution, though, Comfrey spreads like gossip in a small town. Those roots are persistent little devils. Plant it where you want it to stay, or better yet, use some barriers to keep it contained. Trust me on this one. I learned the hard way when it took over half my herb garden. The best part? You can harvest leaves multiple times per season without killing the plant. It just keeps giving and giving like that friend who always brings dessert to potlucks. Speaking of persistent helpers that work overtime, let's talk about a plant that makes the perfect cup of tea while secretly working as your garden's bodyguard. Medieval knights didn't just sip chamomile tea to calm their nerves before battle. They scattered these delicate white and yellow flowers around their camps because they knew something we're only rediscovering today. This humble herb was their secret weapon against soil that had given up. Chamomile works like that friend who shows up when everything's falling apart and somehow makes it better. While other plants struggle in tired, overworked soil, chamomile thrives and starts fixing problems immediately. It releases natural compounds through its roots that actually wake up beneficial soil bacteria that have been lying dormant. Here's where it gets interesting. Those same compounds that make chamomile tea so soothing, they're chemical signals that tell harmful nematodes and soil pests to pack their bags and leave. Makes sense, right? Nature rarely wastes a good design. But chamomile's real magic happens when you plant it next to struggling crops. Farmers call it the plant doctor because it literally nurses sick plants back to health. The calcium and potassium in its tissues slowly release into the surrounding soil as the plant grows and drops leaves. Well, here's something that'll make you rethink those dandelion-infested corners of your yard. Research shows that tomatoes grown near chamomile produce 20% more fruit. 20%? That's like getting an extra week's worth of harvest for free. The Romans weren't kidding when they called it ground apple. The name chamomile comes from their words meaning exactly that. They noticed how the scent improved when they walked through fields where it grew wild. Turns out they were smelling healthier soil chemistry in action. And the weird part is, chamomile actually gets stronger when you step on it. Unlike most plants that sulk when trampled, this one releases more of its beneficial oils. Medieval monks planted it along their garden paths for exactly this reason. One warning, though. Chamomile can be a bit too enthusiastic about self-seeding. You might find it popping up everywhere next season. But honestly, when a plant works this hard to improve your soil while asking for practically nothing in return, maybe that's not such a bad problem to have. Then there is another medieval favorite that takes soil improvement to an entirely different level. Medieval folks called it the white man's footstep, because wherever European settlers walked, this hardy little plant seemed to follow. Plantain wasn't just tagging along for the ride, though. It was actually doing some serious underground work that nobody really understood back then. Here's where it gets interesting. While most plants throw a tantrum when faced with terrible soil, plantain practically throws a party. Clay that's harder than your great aunt's fruitcake? No problem. Soil so compacted that even earthworms need a chisel? Plantain says, "Hold my beer," and sets up shop anyway. But why should you care about this seemingly ordinary weed? Well, plantain is basically nature's soil therapist. Those tough, fibrous roots don't just survive in poor conditions, they actively work to break up compacted earth. Think of it as having a tiny construction crew working around the clock, loosening things up so water and air can finally get where they need to go. The medieval crowd knew something was special about this plant. They'd find it growing in the most beaten down areas around their settlements. Makes sense, right? While other plants were being picky about their living conditions, Plantain was rolling up its sleeves and getting to work. And here's the kicker. Plantain doesn't just fix soil problems, it prevents them. Those broad leaves create a natural umbrella that protects the earth from getting pounded by heavy rain. Meanwhile, the roots keep everything locked in place, preventing erosion like a green security system. The downside? Well, Plantain can spread faster than gossip in a small town. One day you've got a nice patch helping your problem soil, next thing you know it's taken over half your garden. Regular maintenance keeps it in check though. But here's what really impressed those medieval gardeners. Wherever Plantain grew thick, other plants seemed to do better too. Birds loved the seeds, which meant more natural pest control. The soil gradually improved, becoming darker and richer over time. Speaking of plants that medieval folks absolutely couldn't ignore, there's one that'll surprise you. Most people today run screaming from it, but back then, they actually cooked with it and made medicine from it every single day. Nobody talks about nettles at garden parties. Makes sense, right? Most folks spend their weekends trying to eliminate these weeds with expensive chemicals. But medieval peasants knew something we've forgotten. Nettles were kitchen gold and soil magic rolled into one prickly package. Here's the thing about stinging nettles that'll surprise you. They're basically the multivitamin of the plant world, packed with more nutrients than most vegetables you buy at the grocery store. When these powerhouses decompose, they release nitrogen, potassium, and iron directly into your soil. It's like giving your garden a premium fertilizer shake, except this one's completely free. But wait, there's a catch that makes nettles even more valuable. They're what soil scientists call indicator plants. Finding nettles growing naturally means your soil already has decent fertility potential. They won't waste time on truly dead dirt. Smart, isn't it? The medieval crowd turned nettles into soup, bread, and even beer. One old recipe book from 1200 mentions nettle porridge as a spring tonic that awakens the blood. Well, it definitely awakens something in your soil too. Now, before you go grabbing nettles barehanded like some overzealous weekend warrior, remember they earned that stinging part of their name honestly. Those tiny hairs inject formic acid, the same stuff fire ants use. Wear gloves unless you enjoy explaining to your spouse why your hands look like you wrestled a porcupine. Here's where nettles get really interesting for soil revival. When you cut them back regularly, they keep pumping nutrients into the ground through their extensive root system. Studies show they can improve soil nitrogen levels by over 50% in just one growing season. That's better than most expensive fertilizers. The weird part is how they help neighboring plants. Nettles actually boost disease resistance in nearby vegetables and herbs. Medieval gardeners planted them strategically around their vegetable patches, creating natural protective barriers. And here's something your grandfather probably knew but never mentioned. Nettle tea makes an excellent liquid fertilizer. Just steep the leaves for a week, strain out the chunks, and water your struggling plants. But nettles aren't the only medieval plant that works underground magic through clever chemistry. Medieval knights believed Borage gave them courage before battle. They'd toss those brilliant blue flowers into their wine cups, hoping for liquid bravery. Well, turns out they were onto something, though the real magic happens underground, not in your bloodstream. Borage works like nature's own mining operation. Those roots dig deep, sometimes reaching down 3 feet or more, pulling up minerals that surface plants can't reach. It's basically running a vertical supply chain in your garden, hauling treasure from the depths like a botanical freight elevator. But here's where it gets interesting. When borage leaves drop and decompose, they release all those deep earth minerals right at ground level. Your shallow-rooted vegetables suddenly have access to potassium, calcium, and trace elements they'd never see otherwise. Makes sense, right? The flowers aren't just pretty faces either. Those star-shaped blue beauties are like neon signs for bees and beneficial insects. I've watched my garden transform into Grand Central Station once borage starts blooming. The pollinator traffic alone boosts fruit set on nearby plants by incredible amounts. Then there's the strawberry connection. Plant borage near your strawberry patch, and you might see yields jump by 30% or more. Nobody's entirely sure why this partnership works so well. Maybe it's the mineral mining, maybe it's pest deterrence, or perhaps those medieval folks were right about the courage thing. Strawberry plants certainly seem braver around Borage. The weird part is how Borage handles itself in poor soil. While other plants throw tantrums in depleted ground, Borage just rolls up its sleeves and gets to work. It actually prefers challenging conditions, thriving where pampered plants would curl up and quit. And let's not forget the kitchen benefits. Those cucumber-flavored leaves made medieval feasts more interesting, and they'll do the same for your salads today. Though I'd recommend picking young leaves, the older ones can feel like sandpaper on your tongue. One warning though, Borage self-seeds with the enthusiasm of a door-to-door salesman. You'll have volunteers popping up everywhere next season. But speaking of plants that know how to spread themselves around, there's another medieval soil fixer that takes coverage to a whole different level. Medieval farmers knew something we've forgotten about: vetch. While we're busy dumping expensive fertilizers on our dead soil, they were growing their own nitrogen factories right in their fields. And here's the kicker: vetch does it all for free. This unassuming plant looks like a tangled mess of green spaghetti sprawling across the ground. Don't let its humble appearance fool you. Vetch is basically running an underground nitrogen laboratory 24/7. Those little root nodules, they're housing bacteria that grab nitrogen straight from the air and stuff it into your soil. It's like having invisible workers mining gold while you sleep. Romans figured this out during wartime when food got scarce. They'd plant vetch not just for livestock feed, but because it left the soil richer than they found it. Smart move for people wearing togas, right? Here's where vetch gets really impressive. Plant it in tired, worn-out dirt and watch what happens. Over one growing season, this overachiever can boost soil nitrogen by 150%. That's not a typo. Your soil literally becomes 1.5 times richer without you lifting a finger or opening your wallet. But there's more brewing beneath the surface. While vetch fixes nitrogen, it's also breaking up compacted soil with its root system. Think of it as getting 2 services for the price of one, like finding a barber who also fixes your car. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, you don't ask questions. The best part? Vetch doesn't. Demand fancy treatment. Throw some seeds on poor soil in early spring or late fall, and it'll do the heavy lifting. No fertilizers needed. No special watering schedule. It actually prefers working with challenging conditions. Kind of like that one neighbor who volunteers to help everyone move furniture. And when you're ready to plant your main crops, just mow the vetch down and let it decompose. All that stored nitrogen gets released slowly, feeding whatever you plant next. Well, speaking of plants that work while you relax, there's one more medieval favorite that might surprise you with how effortlessly it transforms barren ground into something magical. Who knew finding a 4-leaf version was the least impressive thing about clover? This humble plant has been pulling off soil miracles since medieval times, when farmers thought they'd struck gold discovering its powers. Clover doesn't just sit there looking pretty in your garden. It's actually a nitrogen factory, pulling this essential nutrient straight from the air and pumping it into your soil. Makes sense, right? While other plants are struggling to find food, clover's making its own feast and sharing leftovers with everyone nearby. Here's where it gets interesting. Clover roots team up with special bacteria called rhizobia. These microscopic partners form little nodules that work like tiny chemical plants, converting atmospheric nitrogen into plant-friendly fertilizer. Your soil gets richer without spending a dime on expensive amendments. But wait, there's more to this medieval multitasker. Clover spreads like gossip in a small town, creating a living carpet that chokes out weeds naturally. Those pesky dandelions and crabgrass can't compete with clover's aggressive ground coverage. It's nature's own weed barrier, and it actually improves while it protects. The water-saving benefits are impressive too. That dense mat of clover leaves acts like a green umbrella, keeping soil moisture from evaporating during hot summer days. Your water bill will thank you, and so will your other plants. Medieval farmers discovered another clever trick. Clover attracts beneficial insects like nobody's business. Bees absolutely love those tiny flowers, and where bees go, better pollination follows. Your vegetables and fruits will produce more bountifully with these winged helpers buzzing around. And here's something that'll make you appreciate the simple plant even more. Clover can fix up to 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre in a single season. That's equivalent to several bags of commercial fertilizer delivered naturally and continuously. The best part? Clover keeps working even after you mow it down. Those chopped leaves decompose quickly, releasing stored nutrients back into the soil. It's like having a recycling program that runs itself. Well, wouldn't you know it, sometimes the most powerful solutions hide in plain sight. This little green miracle worker proves that the best garden helpers often wear the simplest disguises,